Well, welcome to Voices of the Valley, part of the ValleyHoopsInsider.com website. I'm Harry Schroeder, editor of the site, host of the show. Glad you're with us today as we get ready for the kind of reopening of the Missouri Valley Conference regular season conference games. All the teams played one game a bit ago, and most of the teams will be starting on Sunday again as they relaunch the conference season. Loyola and Southern Illinois will not be able to play COVID restrictions for the Southern Illinois program. We'll talk about all of that with our friend Paul Oren of the Northwest Indiana Times. We bring him into the conversation as well. And Paul, first of all, I'm trying to hit the right button. Let's see if I can do this right. It's all technically savvy. I'm really good at this. There he is. He made it.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year to you, Paul. Yes, we're good at this technical stuff in this generation of time. Paul works for the Northwest Indiana Times, the beat writer for the Valparaiso Crusader Beacons. That still comes out of me every once in a while. Paul, before we get started on all that, Happy New Year to you. And how was Lord of the Rings?
It was great. Thank you. For those of you who follow me on Twitter at NWI Oren, I put a lengthy thread out.
Lengthy.
That I don't know that anyone
it was
really...
lengthy.
It was lengthy. It's funny. I walked into the Arc today to do some pre-game practice stuff. I hadn't been there since their last game against William and Mary on December 22nd. And all of the coaches immediately were like, "Oh, what did you think of Lord of the Rings? What did you think?" I'd never watched it, and it stemmed from a trip that I took with the Valpo basketball team when I was a senior in college, and I fell asleep in the theater watching the first movie. And as a matter of fact, I missed the first 5 minutes trying to negotiate why we were seeing that movie and not Ali. And then yesterday when I started watching Fellowship of the Ring and I saw the first 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, this totally would have made so much more sense had I seen that first 5 minutes. And so it was great. It was a wonderful new year. We had talked about doing something fun and exciting. And then we just said, you know what, let's chill, let's relax. We got basketball coming up here. I want to be able to make sure I get to those games, and all eyes are towards St. Louis, and I'm going to do whatever I can to stay healthy. And that for me meant a lot of Frodo Baggins, 11 hours worth. It was amazing.
Unbelievable. How long for you covering the Beacons now, Valparaiso, in their various intonations of names, both as a student and as a writer for the paper?
Well, it's been a long time, Harry, and it's something that I've really been thinking about a lot lately, as this year is the 20-year anniversary of me graduating college. And I started covering Valpo a little bit when I was a sophomore and a junior. I'd go to some games. I did studio on the radio. But it was my senior year was really the year when I dove in and really spent a lot of time with that team. And to think now it's been 20 years is crazy to me. I spent 20 years ago today, we were in Lawrence, Kansas, Valpo against University of Kansas. And we had shots of Sprite at 7-Up, or excuse me, shots of 7-Up at midnight, Sprite or 7-Up, one of the two. That's what Homer Drew allowed. And then the next day, I believe, after Valpo and Kansas played each other, I went out to the bar next to the hotel, and Kirk Heinrich was there celebrating his 21st birthday party after beating Valpo. So what a cause of celebration, escaping with a win over Valpo 20 years ago.
Name dropping all over the place. Homer Drew, Kirk Heinrich, you're the man. 20 years there, you've seen a lot. You've seen some just dynamic players and some great runs of, postseason acclaim and conference championships and all of that. And here we are in 2021 trying to survive the COVID for the second or third year in a row. And the Beacons have been completely remade in this off season. And you and I talked a little bit in the off season, but the remake has taken root, hasn't it? This team looks pretty strong.
Yeah, they started off really bad with a pair of losses in the exhibition games, which has got a lot of people nervous. Mm-hmm. And then they dropped their first 3 games, including, Harry, a pair of games that they should have won, right? I mean, it was a tough game against Toledo. They had a lead late. They couldn't close it out. And then they just didn't. They lost to UIC in overtime. That's a game you have to win. And then they went to Stanford. And while the friends in Vegas enjoyed how Valpo closed out that game, I think it didn't look good for a long time. Then they got Ben Krikke back when they went to the Bahamas, and they're 7-3 since getting Ben Krikke back. 2 of those games are non-D1s. We don't really count them. They're 5-3 in Division I games since they went to the Bahamas and got Ben Krikke back, and they were playing at relatively full strength. One of those losses was a game against Coastal Carolina that Valpo had a chance to win late. They were in the game at Drake late. And then against Charlotte, they had that game won and they lost it late. So their 3 losses, being at relatively full strength, have been by 1 or 2 possessions. This is a team I think is ready to put the pieces together. And I say that, though, Harry, now COVID is back. And COVID's back in a very unpredictable manner, right? Like different, the Valley has changed some rules and, like, are you showing symptoms? Is it 5 days? Is it 10 days? Do you have to wear a mask while playing? I don't know the answer to any of this stuff. As I sit here right now, and we're doing this on New Year's Day, Valpo plays 22 hours from now. I don't know, and I don't think Matt Loddick knows who's going to be able to play tomorrow. Right. And I don't think that Dan Muller knows who's going to be able to play tomorrow for Illinois State. I don't know that. What we do know is that Loyola can't play tomorrow, and Southern Illinois can't play tomorrow. But if you have 8 healthy guys, walk-on, scholarship, manager, coach with eligibility, broadcaster that never started his eligibility clock, or writer, I think you got to play.
It's amazing how fluid everything seems to be. I tweeted out something Friday that, hey, Indiana State's going to play because apparently they have some kind of 48-hour rule that you have to, if you know something, you have to acknowledge 48 hours in advance. And Indiana State said, hey, we're playing. So I'm like, okay, well, Bradley and Indiana State are playing. Good news. But like you say, we don't know from hour to hour. All of a sudden, late last night, Southern Illinois, it was announced that Southern Illinois couldn't field a team or whatever. And so Loyola is playing some D3 NAIA team or something tomorrow at Gentile Arena. They're going to sneak a game in. Before we get to all of that, going back to your Beacons, give me a little bit on Kobe King. I've seen the team play, but not with him. I mean, I've watched some games online, but not with Kobe King. And I know you're high on him, and I know he's been very productive. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see when Kobe King plays against Illinois State tomorrow.
Yeah, first of all, and this is always like a tough thing, right? Because I'm not a cheerleader, and I'm not supposed to be a cheerleader. But Kobe King, I think, had a bad rap coming out of Wisconsin, right? That he quit on the team, yada, 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 whatever happened. And I don't really know everything that happened, other than I kind of felt like he was a bit exonerated when all the other stuff came out about Wisconsin. Let me tell you that he has been phenomenal to be around. Just the happiest guy, right? Like, here's a guy, and I got to give a hat tip to Myron Metcalf of ESPN.com, because I did a big story on Kobe, and I didn't get some of the stuff that Myron got. This idea of Kobe kind of unloading mattresses in freezing cold warehouses. What he went through after he left Wisconsin was unbelievable. And he just wanted to play basketball again. And I think the note there is that it was Trevor Anderson who said, you want this? Let's go get it for you. And Trevor reached out to Matt Loddick, and I had a long talk with Trevor, and part of it was on the record, part of it was off the record, and there really was no difference, right? Trevor loves Kobe, right? They are very close.
That says a lot right there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And he said something to me. He goes, the basketball, fine. It was the degree. He wanted to make sure Kobe King got in a position to get a degree, and that the basketball is going to be great. And obviously Trevor is going to benefit from having Kobe King on the floor with him, and Valpo is going to benefit from it. But every conversation, interaction, both in this business profession we do and in just life, I've seen Kobe. He's great. He's fantastic. Now, you talk about a basketball player. You do a little bit of everything. Leading the team in scoring, 16 points a game. He's got 9 offensive rebounds in 4 games. Cricky's got 9 offensive rebounds in 10 games. Nobody else other than Kithier, who's got a ton, has hit that. King has a nose for the basketball. He can shoot 52%. He gets to the basket. He can cut inside. He's really, really good. He's been a great teammate, excellent player, and he's going to be a phenomenal Valley player this year.
Looking forward to seeing him, and I'm going to be watching that game tomorrow. What are you most excited? That's maybe the wrong word, but you look at this Valpo team and how they're made up with all the transfers from the Big Ten and others, and the returners. You mentioned Cricky and Sheldon Edwards, who I did a long interview with in the offseason. Really enjoyed getting to know him. Where do you see this team landing in the league race? Let's set COVID aside. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But all things being equal, your evaluation so far of where they're at, where do you see this Beacon team landing?
I think middle of the road. And I say that because first, I mean, you have to think about COVID, right? And who's going to have more relaxed COVID restrictions. I've been told that COVID doesn't exist in Missouri, right? And so my guess is that the Missouri State guys are going to be able to go out there and play all the time. Like they could have blood coming out of their nose and they might be able to play. I'm not, that probably sounds like I'm saying irresponsible things, but right.
Some of Missouri, we have it. Springfield, Missouri does not have it.
Yeah. Okay. So right there, right? Like Valpo's been diligent about this stuff. So I mean, I think every day is going to be interesting. In a vacuum, though, if we're asking, this is a team that has proven they can lose to anybody, right? Like, I mean, they've proven that, the non-D1 losses, the UIC loss, they haven't been able to close out close games. Like they've done that a little bit, at Western Michigan, they put their foot on the gas. That's not a very good team that they beat there. Eastern Michigan home game, William and Mary, they're just better than, right? That said, I think the team's really good, right? But the thing is that Loyola's really good, and they've played together for a long time. Northern Iowa's really good, and they've played together for a long time. Missouri State's really good. A lot of those guys have played together for a long time. And Drake has been playing together since, before you and I were born. So I struggle to see, and I don't know what Northern Iowa's problem is. They've had some struggles this year. I haven't paid enough attention to really know what's going on. I know that, I've talked to Wyatt Wheeler and the great reporter out of Springfield, and who's alluded that there's drama sometimes there. But, that could be any team, right? Especially when there's only one ball. A lot of guys made a decision to come back and delay being pros. What I will tell you is I think these Valpo guys really like each other, as evidenced by this Preston Reedinger freshman, who the other guys on the team were like, we need him to be playing with us, even though that meant taking minutes away from some of those guys that wanted him to be on the court. So I think this team's close. It's just, have they put the body of work together on the court together? And, I think obviously having a long break here, and they didn't play against Prairie View A&M. They haven't left, other than going home for Christmas. They haven't had to leave and travel since beginning of December. They've had all these home games. That's helped them practice a lot. I do think that the way the schedule is set up, they have a better opportunity to improve throughout the year than they did last year, when things were skittish in terms of you're going to go play 2 games. You don't really get to practice when you're on the road like that. So, basketball to my head that you're going to throw at it, if I get it wrong, I'm going to say that Valpo probably finishes 5th or 6th and avoids Thursday night.
And that would be respectable. As we looked at these teams in preseason, Northern hasn't lived up to expectations. Drake has got some injury problems. Missouri State's a little bit of an enigma. A lot of different things could take place. When I was, as the expert that I am, reading other people's articles, about the players that were coming into Valpo, and reading your stuff and trying to dig in as much as I could. So Trevor Anderson's going to be the quintessential point guard. Oh, wait, he's a good rebounder, and he doesn't really have a lot of assists. And Kithier is going to do some great things. And this team has a lot of components. Sheldon, can really go off and be mercurially terrific and maybe lose the game for you all at the same time. There's some pieces on this team that they could really ascend in a great way.
I think you're right, especially about Sheldon. When he's on, good luck. Hit record on the DVR and submit the whole game to ESPN, because when he's on, he's on. And I'll tell you this, Harry. The one thing about Sheldon is, if he hits his first shot, the train's leaving the station. If he misses his first shot, I think last year what we saw was that the train derailed, in the depot. He has become a phenomenal defender. And I think, whether the shot goes in or the shot doesn't go in, all you can control is getting good shots. If it goes in, great. If it doesn't go in, okay. You can control defensive effort, and that's something that he's done. Sheldon is very outspoken on Twitter, never in a derogatory way, never in a individual way.
But he's present.
But he's very present on Twitter. And I loved one of the things that he said earlier this year. I think, like, Valpo sells all these sponsorships, the U.S. Army rebounder of the game, or whatever they do for their games, right? And Valpo Athletics, I think, tweeted out something about how he was the defensive player of the game or something like that. And I think he quote retweeted it at one point and said, like, who would have thought a year ago that I'd be a defensive player? And I mean, the guy's got 17 blocks. He's leading the team in blocks. He's leading the team in 14 steals. He's got a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He is averaging, 3 rebounds a game, and 34 of those are on the defensive side, which is third on the team. He's done just a fourth on the team. Excuse me. He does a lot of the little things. If his shot's not falling, he still does a lot of other things. And they were going to bring him off the bench for a little bit, but you've got to have him in the starting lineup. So when is he going to guard Antonio Reeves? Maybe. I think Kobe King might as well. But those two guys at the top of the defense there are splendid.
When I think about this team and all the different pieces, clearly it's taken them a little bit to figure each other out. When I talked to Sheldon preseason, he was like, I don't think we're going to lose a game. Man, we've got so much talent. It took them a while to get out of the blocks, but we do see it now that they started to mesh, and King really hasn't been part of the team that long in terms of game activity. That I think what you said a minute ago, that they can get better as the season goes on. Again, setting COVID aside, they have a chance to be pretty darn good in March. You talked about trying to get to St. Louis.
Yeah, and the thing that they got to do, Harry, they got to win their home games. You have to. Last year was such a coin flip in terms of that, because you played some teams at home, other teams you played on the road, and it was split. Everything's equal this year. You got to defend your home court. Maybe you got the luck of the draw last year, and you got some good teams at home or whatever. Valpo got lucky in a couple of their schedule things last year. This year they got to win their home games, and that starts with Illinois State on Sunday, right? And they're going to be down some guys, and Valpo might be down some guys too. Again, we're not really sure, but home against Illinois State, at Northern Iowa, home against Southern Illinois, and Southern Illinois probably at that point coming off some COVID stuff. So if you can win these first 3, then you go into Loyola. It's a tough stretch to start the year, but you got to win your home games. You got to win your home games. The best teams, the teams that are going to avoid Thursday night, are going to go 9-0, or 8-1, or 7-2 at home, and then split the rest of the games on the road. And at that point, you avoid Thursday, and now you're set up. Unless you got to play that 3-6 game where you play tip-off at 11 o'clock at night, and never fun for the reporters in that respect.
No, well, they don't play the games for the reporters anyway. Four league games on Sunday. Valparaiso, Loyola's game against Southern Illinois has been postponed. The Ramblers playing some lower level team. I'm confused by some of the choices teams are making. It's like, well, we don't have a game, so let's bring somebody in we don't know, risk getting infected, risk getting sick prior to the league really starting later this week for Loyola. It's kind of confusing to me that they're doing some of those kinds of things. Teams are doing that left and right. When somebody cancels, well, we'll play Little Sisters of the Poor. But to me, the only thing that can come out of that isn't positive.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I would say that with Loyola, I would almost make an exception. They haven't played a game since December 10th.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
They haven't played a home game since December 7th. They haven't played a home Division I game against December 1st, right? So, it's been a long time. They had Norfolk State canceled, Davidson canceled, Southern Illinois has been postponed, and so now they slide in this St. Xavier game, and I think and then they're going to go to normal, so they're not going to be home again until January 8th. To me, I hear you, Harry, and I think there's a risk. I'd also say these guys signed up to play basketball. They're basketball players, and they haven't been able to play basketball in a long time. And just the idea of putting the jersey on and getting your feet wet and going through that before you go to a very important at Illinois State game, right? Because that's a game you should win. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't played a game in a month, maybe you want to get a little bit of experience there. And so again, I think we could talk ourselves in circles on this stuff all the time. Valpo, I think last year they put themselves in a situation where they quarantined a bunch of their guys to make sure they were healthy. And I think off the court that had residual effects, right? And it was miserable. So, in a way, it's like these guys want to live their lives, but they also want to be basketball players. And so, I guess good luck to Loyola. I hope everything comes out great in that, but I understand why they're doing it.
It's interesting as we shift gears a little bit about the COVID stuff. The league has changed. Now we're not automatically forfeiting, and if you have 8 players and a coach, you get to play. And so much of this, not to get political, but so much of this is guys testing a certain way. They may or may not really even be sick. Like sometimes I think, oh, well, they're all sick and they can't play. It may not even be that they're sick, but they're technically, have COVID. And so it's so disruptive, to the way the whole thing is being played out. And you hope none of them, right, are actually feeling terrible or at risk. And we never know when we get those reports, whether there are people within the program and so we can't play. We want them all to be healthy. But this is going to be a factor all season long. It's not like last year, maybe some of the teams got by it at a certain point. That's what happened to Loyola, right? They had it, they got quarantined, and then the rest of the year they were technically fine. I don't think it's going to be the same this year. This Omicron thing seems to rear its ugly head any day that ends in the letter Y.
So I talked to Valparaiso coach Matt Loddick earlier today. First time I'd been at the Arc again in a week plus. And I thought we were so close to getting to a point where we weren't talking about this anymore. And that was kind of the sentiment that he and I shared with one another. And kind of said, look, it's not, here we go again. It's the third year of dealing with this, and it's the third iteration of dealing with this. And he said last year it was almost a little bit easier because it was expected, right? This year it kind of came out of nowhere. Like the Valpo, the basketball team, and the university at large, as far as I know, had no COVID issues in the fall semester, right? Had no issues at all. And then all of this stuff kind of pops up, right? Then I asked him, how do you deal with this? And he said, look, it's in kind of a blunt way. It's almost kind of like dealing with a rolled ankle. It's like, okay, this guy can't play and we're going to rehab him. We're going to get him back. And he said, it's a bit different, obviously, because, a rolled ankle is something you can look at and you can see them hobbling or whatever. But if a guy tests positive and 2 or 3 days later, he's healthy, but he still could have the lingering effects. Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks just came out and said that he lost a ton of weight on having COVID. And like, who knows? I know people who have gotten it and have been back fine immediately. I know people who have gotten it and are no longer here. And it's tough. And you said not to get political. I would say that, man, I just wish this happened any other year other than an election year, because I feel like we might have been able to come together and figure this out if we weren't, setting up sides on it right now.
No, absolutely.
That being said, look, I think, the Valley, I think everybody, when they set forward the forfeit rules months ago, did it from the right spot, right? Hey, look, this is the way to get this under control. What we have found now, I think, is that, with vaccinations, you can still get it. It's not going to kill you, knock on wood. I mean, and I say that tongue in cheek because, like, it might kill people. So, I mean, I'm a basketball reporter. I'm not a doctor, right? And I don't do my own research because I'm not that guy. So, to me, it's like I like that the Valley kind of shifted things around, and there's a part of me that really wants to see a team start 5 walk-ons, and like, it's the equivalent of my Green Bay Packers here are going to be taking on the Minnesota Vikings tomorrow night, and they're going to be starting a guy who I don't know has ever really done anything in the NFL before. So let's get excited for that.
Well, and you're right. The forfeit plan was, okay, you guys all do take care of business, get everybody vaccinated, and if you don't have enough players, then bad on you, and you need to forfeit. Oh wait, it doesn't keep us from getting this new variation, and so all bets are off. Things are just different, and I've been advocating for weeks for them to change, and I'm glad they finally did as well. And I like the 8-player thing versus 7. I think it means you're going to have enough players to actually get something done. But it does take.
Would you go Norman Dale? My team is on the floor. Let's say you only got 4 healthy guys.
Yeah, here we come.
Yeah, let's say you got Cricky Kithier, Kobe King, and I don't know, Trevor Anderson. There's going to be another K out there they can put out there. But,
play a 4-man zone and just go for it.
My team is on the floor.
That's right.
By the way, Hoosiers, incredibly overrated movie. Blue Chips is the best basketball movie ever made. Just want to put that out there.
There we go. We're getting all kind of movie reviews from Paul Oren today. That's why we had him on.
That's right.
I almost wish, in retrospect, they would have done this season like last. Right? If they had just been able to lock everybody down, maybe basketball would be immune this year. Because I think we're going to miss games. I think we're going to miss players and miss games, and I think the wins and losses are going to be wonky in terms of the schedule. I hope I'm wrong about all of that, but it just seems like that's the way it's going to go. Quick predictions before I let you go. Is it Loyola's league to lose? What I mean is, can anybody beat the Ramblers?
Yeah, Drake can beat the Ramblers. I think Drake and Loyola will be playing on Sunday in the Valley in a vacuum, right? Like, obviously, they could be on the same side of the bracket depending on how things go. I think Northern Iowa will figure it out. I think they're going to be there in the end. I think Missouri State has got too much talent. I'd be interested if another team can pop through those four to get to the semifinals. But I do think that Loyola against Drake is going to be excellent. I can't wait to see it. The first meeting between those two teams, we got to wait a long time, January 30th, and then February 19th at Gentile. I might drive over for that one. It's a couple days after Loyola plays Valpo. I might drive over for Loyola and Drake. And
I just think the loss of Roman Penn makes them such a different team. They're so much shorter. Their bench is shorter. They're, I'm not as bullish on the Bulldogs as I was. Watched Missouri State. They played a NAIA team the other day, but they got DeMarcus Sharp back, and so I think that makes them a significantly better team. Donovan Clay's playing better now. He has been kind of middling along, but he's playing better now. And I'm telling you, Dana Ford is working because he's
a great coach. He's
changing his lineups left and right, trying to get the right mix and to motivate the players. And
again, I didn't want to come off. I said earlier stuff about Missouri State, he's an excellent coach. They're really good. They got too much talent not to be really good. They'll figure it out, and Valpo will figre it out too. Kudos by the wall. Kudos to Dan Muller in Illinois State, right?
Yeah, they're playing ball.
Yeah, and I wish nothing but the best for that guy. And I'm partial to Redbird Twitter. So,
well, when I went down and watched Missouri State play SEMO, the opener, and they scored 94 points or something and lost. They didn't play any defense, and so it was like that was disheartening for Missouri State Bear fans. And it'll be interesting though. But you're right; they have so much talent. And you talked about the COVID effect. For a long while, Austin Fife wasn't playing because he had long-term COVID effects. He didn't have COVID anymore. He just couldn't breathe much. And so he wasn't playing many minutes for them. And his role is growing back into where it belongs. It'll be interesting to see how they play out. AJ Green still, to me, I've watched him 2 or 3 times. He still doesn't look like AJ Green yet. No. And so we'll see.
You hope that it comes back for him. You really
absolutely.
And 100%. But to have that surgery, it's painful.
Yep. Yeah. So okay, I asked you who's going to win it. You said Loyola Drake. You kind of waffled there. Player of the year. Who's going to be our player of the year?
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, I will tell you that I only look at conference games, and I said this when they played in December, and AJ Green was exceptional in that game, right? So is Damask of Southern Illinois. So is Isaiah Mosley and Prim. Prim had great numbers, as a matter of fact, but he had 6 turnovers in that game. I think I came out from it thinking that Green or Prim and Mosley could be there. And Damask is really, really good. I'd probably lean Gage Prim. I don't know who's going to stop him, right? When he's on, he's on. He's the best big in the conference.
No doubt.
I'd go with Gage Prim.
When we look through some of these things, tomorrow, Illinois State, you mentioned Dan Muller and the Redbirds. I've seen them play. I saw them in person, and then I've seen them on TV a bit. They got a fight in them.
Yeah.
That to me is exceptional. Like they've got a want to right now that is very impressive.
You hear about teams that play the doubting card. Brian Wardle's got this down to a science. So no one ever talks about us. We talk about you all the time, Bradley. But Illinois State is a team that most of us have written off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have. And to me, like, kudos to Dan Muller for bringing together a group of guys, because it was just a couple of years ago they had some of my favorite players in the league, and Phil Fain and a couple of the other guys that they had on that team. The
Malik Yarborough and Paris Lee and
Yarborough. Paris Lee was before my time, but the point guard they had a couple of years ago was I really enjoyed. Valpo's first couple of years in the Valley, but man, and then they brought in some transfers and it didn't really pan out, and it just he's been through a lot, and I'm wishing the best for that guy, because I think he's a great coach, and I really, really enjoy his approach. I enjoy watching him play, and I also really enjoy when I see the Illinois State fans get fired up and like they're calling for his head, and then he just wins. It's like, all right. I mean, nothing is better to me now when I gotten to know these coaches that like they just win, and then you can't really say anything. So, and I know that upsets some of the Bradley super fans when Illinois State wins. So it's my favorite from the outside. Favorite rivalry is watching those two bicker back and forth with one another. It's no one told me that it was going to be this fun being in the Valley.
Speaking of the Valley, I'll wrap it up with this. Belmont on the way. And the great Luke Martin talking to Josh Schertz the other day. No, not to Josh Schertz, and was it Luke Martin? It was Mike Reese talking to the commissioner, Jeff Jackson. And Mike Reese asked the commissioner, and he said, okay, I've got to ask you about, expansion and so forth. And this is what Commissioner Jackson said. He said, next year we will have a deeper and stronger Missouri Valley to start the 2022 season than we have starting the 2021 season. Well, that to me says they're expanding, and they might be expanding 2 more teams.
Yeah. I think I said this on my podcast, Union Street Hoops, which you can find all over the internet, that I really like the idea of Belmont. And I love the idea of Murray State.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know beyond that, right? I just don't know. I don't know about Arlington or Kansas City or these big or UIC, these big markets that you have to that they feel like they need to get into, because look, I've been in a league before, and I say I haven't. I've covered a team that was in a league with big markets, and they just don't care. Right. Are people lining up in Dallas to go see UT Arlington, or are they lining up to go see Luka Doncic? Right? Like, if you have fun money to spend, where are you going to spend it? And so that to me, but again, I'm not as smart as these people up here, right? And that guy, Jeff Jackson, who I haven't really had a chance to talk to or meet. I asked him a couple questions on a teleconference, but I trust the guy, right? He comes from that neck of the woods in the Big 12 area or whatever. So, they hired him for a reason, and, I go for it. But I like the intimacy of either 10 or 12. Anything beyond that, now you're playing unbalanced schedules. I mean, if you can't play 26 conference games. It's just not feasible. So I don't know. I'll be just like you, watching very curiously, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I love the idea of Murray State as well. When I'm thinking about the Missouri Valley side of that, I cover the Ohio Valley as well, and I feel like that poor league is getting crippled, so I feel badly on the other side. I could understand UIC because there is a Valley footprint, if I can say it that way, in Chicago, maybe an interest in that regard. But
I like UIC, Harry. Let me just say, I like UIC. I don't like adding UIC because you feel like you need to get into the Chicago market.
Sure,
add them independently of what they are. And their baseball facility is amazing, right? Yeah. It's right downtown. It's beautiful. It's just a beautiful facility, right? And they've got a good athletic. They got a good program going on there, right? And Valpo owes them a couple games after these 2 losses they've had 2 years in a row. But don't add UIC solely on the idea that we got to get into the Chicago market, because Loyola made the Final Four, and people in Chicago were like, do we care? Maybe we care. Maybe we don't. I don't know.
So it's interesting. But when you scale back and you look at the communities where the Missouri Valley has programs, there's something, you talked about intimacy in terms of the schedule. There's something intimate about those teams. In Terre Haute, they care about the Sycamores. In Des Moines or Cedar Falls or in Springfield, Missouri, they care about those programs. And It's their community's team. And that's some of the beauty, some of the quaint, if that's the right word, that's some of the value of what you see in the Missouri Valley Conference.
I really agree with you. And that was something for me that, I mean, if you remember correctly, that first year Valpo was in the Valley, I was hesitant on the whole thing until I got into those communities and I saw them. And I just thought it was great. And I hope that Todd Golden wrote a great article about this a couple of weeks ago. And I hope the Valley, you just put Voices of the Valley up there. So I had the V word on my head. I hope the Valley doesn't lose that special, I get intimacy, for whatever way you want to say it. But again, I'm curious to see what happens. If you add Belmont and Murray State, you're making it harder for other teams to get into the tournament. So now by adding them, you've got to hope that you get multiple chances to get in, multiple bids. Right. And now that just means you have to be able to have the resources to go out and do things in the non-conference to get games, to manipulate your net a little bit. And that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time.
Sure. Appreciate your time. I know the Beacons are at home tomorrow, and so you don't have to travel much. Will you be traveling with the team to the various locations? I know that that's still dicey, not only for some papers, but because of health issues.
Yeah. I don't travel with the team. I'll tell you that much. I will drive on my own, and there becomes a question about, like, I've got some free time coming up next week. So I could go to Northern Iowa, but then it's like 5.5 hour drive there, 5.5 hour drive back, or the comfort of my home. But I feel like, we'll see. We'll see. I got a little bit of a sinus thing going on. You've noticed I've been putting my head to the side and everything like that. And I was looking back through my Facebook memories, and I seem to get one of these every year on New Year's, a sinus infection. So I don't think it's COVID.
He has a sinus infection.
Yeah. So we'll see. Certainly tomorrow's game is going to be exciting. Looking forward to seeing Jim Benson hopefully here. That's a good thing. I love seeing the other reporters. I love seeing you, Harry. And if our paths don't cross before March 5th, then so be it. But we'll see each other. Meet me in St. Louis.
Looking forward to all that. That's Paul Oren, Northwest Indiana Times, Union Street Hoops, right? Did I say it right?
Yes,
the podcast?
Did. Yes, you did. That is the name of the podcast for right now. Absolutely.
If you care about the Missouri Valley Conference, you got to follow Paul on Twitter. You got to listen to his podcast, get to their newspaper. Just spectacular coverage on the Valley and on the Beacons in particular. Paul, appreciate it. Happy New Year to you. And hopefully we will see each other at some game before March. But if not, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
That's Paul Oren. I'm Harry Schroeder. You've been watching Voices of the Valley, a part of the Valley Hoops Insider website and the podcast. Appreciate you coming and being a part of the broadcast today. Remember, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon.